Last year, we had some conversations about AI in China. We had Eric Schmidt, the past founder, chairman of Google, talking about concerns about AI in China. We've heard about the Deepseek moment. Uh, I've had a friendship now for the better part of well over a decade with our next guest, Alvin Graylin, who has a very unique point of view. He'll speak about his background. He's a U.S. citizen and has a deep relationship in China through his work. 30 years focused in AI and XR, semiconductors, and cybersecurity. His mission is shaping a safe and responsible future for AI and XR. XR is augmented and virtual reality, right? Author of one of my favorite books, Our Next Reality. He's founded 4 AI and XR companies in the US and China, a bachelor's in electrical engineering from UW, Washington, and MS in computer science with an AI focus, and MBA from MIT. Let's give it up for Alvin Graylin. All right, Alvin, the reality of the US-China arms race.
Good to see you, my friend.
See you, buddy. Thank you for joining us today.
Appreciate it. I know I'm keeping you guys from lunch, so I promise that the next 40 minutes is going to be worth your time. I'm going to speak very fast because there's a lot of information I'm going to cover. And I'm going to cover some relatively controversial subjects considering the current position that people have um, on this particular topic. And I think a lot of those controversy is due to a lack of information about understanding both sides, right? There is a definite escalating tension, and we need as a world to reduce tension. And the only way to reduce tension is by increasing understanding. So what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be highly consequential, and resolving this conflict is also going to be one of the most important things that happens. Reality is very personal. It's also depends on your experiences as you grew up, right? And all your life experiences. So the reality that we are creating right now is based on what we've been exposed to. I will try to expose you to some ideas that might be different than what you've heard in popular Western press. So just to give, and you know, Peter's already given you my bio. I'm not going to go through all the details, but I do want to introduce you to somebody, which is my grandmother. She's a Californian, native Californian who has Scottish American roots and Ashkenazi heritage. And she, in 1937, went to China to report on the Sino-Japanese War. And while she was there, she had to escape when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and she, as an American citizen, had to escape and left my mom in China. They actually wrote a graphic novel about her life or her escape from China. And in the last frame of this graphic novel, it says, "I will return one day and help to reunite these two amazing countries." And that's actually an inspiration for me to do what I'm doing and to say what I'm saying to you, because I, coming from two heritage, I'm part Chinese, part American, spent half my life in each country, have worked in multiple areas, and have studied this technology. So I'm speaking from a position of understanding of how this grows. I've done cybersecurity, I've built chips, I've worked in telecom, I've worked in XR, I've founded 4 different venture-backed startups, 3 were AI focused, and one in 2005 was a natural language search company in China that was run on all 3 Chinese carriers, meaning essentially what ChatGPT was doing today, I was doing 20 years ago. Okay? We didn't have as much advanced technology, but I do have a basis for what I'm talking about. Okay? And I've also understand the complexities of the Communist Party. This is me. I was born on a Chinese re-education camp because my mom sent a letter to Mao Zedong's wife saying, "Please don't close my ballet school that she had founded." And my dad's a professor of art. And next to that next picture is my brother, and I'm a patriot, I am an American citizen. He was a Navy officer on a nuclear submarine, and his 2 sons next to him are also Navy officers. One is taking over his post at Bremerton on one of the boomer subs, and the other one is going to be a Navy pilot. So I care a lot about the success of America. I also care a lot about the peace and safety of the world. Okay? The problem is right now, every article you see right now is an escalating conflict saying, we need to beat China. There's a war here. We need to create a Manhattan Project. And we know that what happened the last time we had a Manhattan Project. And we have, Alexander Wang putting this article right after Trump got elected, saying we need to win the war on AI war. What's not said is against China, right? So to turn something that has a possibility of 95% possibility of goodness coming out of this. There is certain use cases. Every technology is a dual use, but the benefits of this on the civilian side far, far outweighs the benefits to defense or national security. I talk to a lot of people in the policy circles, and they always bring up this quote. They're like, "Oh, we have to do it because Russia's going to do it. Look at what Putin said. He said, the person who controls AI is going to rule the world." Well, it's actually a bit of a misquote because the whole quote was, "Artificial intelligence is the future, not only for Russia but all mankind, and it brings colossal opportunities and also threats." That was the whole quote before he said, the last part. So really, if you look at if he really believed that whoever owns it will rule the world, you see a lot more Russian language models out there, and there are really none on the top. Right? A lot of people will say, "Oh, but if we don't run and push ahead, China is going to win." Well, this is what when Xi Jinping met with Biden a little over a year ago. This is what he said: China and the United States should be partners rather than rivals. We need to propose mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation as the overarching principles for our relationship, right? And to show the responsibilities of being a major country. And then a friend of mine was actually at the dinner between them, and he specifically said, she said to Biden, "Let's work together. Let's build an advanced AI together." Right? So there's really not this sense of rivalry that people think that there is. So for you guys who watch Matrix, you probably know what the next line is. What is it? There is no spoon. Okay. So the reality is right now, there is no war, and there doesn't need to be a war between US and China on this item. And in fact, why do I say that? And I'll give you some more examples. But the fact that the top two language models coming out of China are open source. Everything about how it's made, its weights, its processes are shared with America, with the rest of the world. If you're in a war with somebody, you do not share your secrets. And the US is not way ahead. I hear a lot of people, the people who are creating the policy today say, we're 2 years ahead. If we keep those sanctions up, we're going to get to 5 years ahead. Once we get to AGI, we're going to shut down their power supply and their communication system. We're going to be 10 years ahead, right? And it's this escalation of conflict, and it's thinking that we can win and we can maintain the lead, which is not possible. And I'll give you some reasons why. The sanctions are not working. The tech diffusion are not working. If anything, it's making China work harder to create a parallel track of technology. The scaling of compute has been the way that the US policymakers are saying. The way to do it is we keep them getting chips, we're going to continue to lead. And if we keep making more chips, we're going to win more. And I'll tell you why that's not true. And there are also a lot of people who say, oh, AI is going to take over. There's robots are coming. That's the biggest risk. That is not the biggest risk. Okay? And AI as a tool, it is not just a tool, and that being a tool by itself is actually not safer. So we need to get to AGI, and I'll tell you why. ASI, AGI is achievable. A lot of people say, oh, that's just science fiction. It's not going to happen. And China is not the enemy, and there's no evidence it wants to destroy democracy. Okay? So although people were telling you that it's not true, we need to work together. We need to create something that is jointly produced so that we have a joint goal of helping make the world a better place. And the world is not zero-sum today, and will be even more not zero-sum when AI and AGI becomes part of our daily lives. So Dave earlier talked about scaling, right? And in the traditional sense, people talk about AI scaling, talk about three things: bigger parameters, more compute for training, and more data. And that's been true for the last 15 years. It's helped to create what we have today. Now, over the the last few, I guess, years, and probably 5 years or so, 7 years since the transformers came, the algorithms and techniques become more important, and actually that's created exponential growth. The the first three items only create logarithmic growth. Okay, over the last couple years, the idea of inference compute or chain of thought reasoning, as they mentioned, and then distillation and quantization have also created more scaling. So we now have actually 6 dimensions of potential scaling. But the important thing to realize is that they all scale at different rates. The first three are logarithmic. The one that we need to spend our most time on is the algorithmic one. And right now, 47% of the world's AI scientists are Chinese, right? Came from educated in China. And who makes algorithms? Humans. Humans make algorithms. Okay, so we need to really think about how the advantage is not in how much new processors you can make. If you make 10 times more compute, you might get 2 to 3x improvement in performance. And one technique change could give you 10 or 20x improvement in performance. Oh, and actually, one other thing is training data is so important today because the better your data, the more accurate your answers, the more range of data, the more wide your answers can be accurate. Right? Distillation and quantization can give you exponential increase, but there's a limit in terms of how much you can. It doesn't make you higher performance. It makes you more efficient, which means you can run it on smaller systems. You can see everything is going up to the right, right? We're essentially saturating all of the current evaluations, all the different benchmarks. Everything is going up. So there's a lot of debate to say, oh, did Deepseek really only spend 3%? Well, actually, if you look at the data which they said is we spent $5 million or so on the last run of the training. If you do a apples to apples, yes, actually they are significantly cheaper than what's out there today. And if you look at what GPT-4.5, 003, Grok 3, they were spending in the order of $400 to $500 million for the compute itself, not including all of the data centers and all these other things. So it is significant. It is real that their advantages have created. And the reasons they've created it is actually because of technique or algorithmic improvements. I'm not going to go through all of them because of time. But essentially by making it smaller, you make it faster. You leverage the hardware limitations that they had by separating, creating multiple mixture of experts. You're able to use smaller memory by using the multi-head lane attention. You now are using less memory, which means less moving things around, and so et cetera, right? And one of the most important things is the pure RL to not require human feedback to train and optimize the systems. That changes everything because that allows the training and improvement to happen much faster. Okay, and then I talked about open sourcing. The thing that a lot of people say is, oh, this is China versus US. Deepseek is not a China national company. It's a private company made by a individual who took his own personal funds to do it. So it is not a national project, but I will say it is a product of US and China policies. Right? The reason that Liang Wenfeng made DeepSeek was because China made certain rules that prevented quantitative trading and algorithmic trading, and so his real business got crushed. And he's like, then I need to do something with all these servers I just got. Okay, and the reason, and if you look at the last part, his team is completely Chinese entrepreneurs or engineers have never left the country. Why? Because over the last 3-4 years, all of the policies in the US said, we're not welcoming any more Chinese students. So the top students stayed in the country. So China...
I can't stress this enough. As the US policies start to restrict China, China begins to develop its own chipsets, its own software, and it just escalates.
Yeah. So they're a product of our policies, not a product of the countries. I want to, and the fact that they made it open source is actually an olive branch, right? The first time he did it, it was maybe not an olive branch because it's just the guy was like, he likes open source. But after he met Xi Jinping, he still last week opened up 6 more new papers that talked about all of his crown jewels of how he does everything. That means the government allows him to do that, okay? And even Gina Raimondo, who was the prior Commerce Secretary, I was actually in a meeting with her when she was adamant, we need to stop and sanction China on these things. At the end, when she left, she said, it's a fool's errand. You can't do it. If you look at the chips, even the sanctions that, why did DeepSeek use 8 8-bit floating point instead of 32, because if you look, the legal H800 and the illegal, at the time, H100, they're the same performance if you went to 8-bit. That's why they optimized it. So they forced them to use the lower end chips, right? And if you look at Huawei, they've accelerated their performance. Now their performance on they're making 7 nanometer chips in-house with their own equipment, and the performance is, probably about half of what the leading NVIDIA chips are. So they're catching up. And here's the scary part, and maybe scary or good or bad, depending on whose perspective. But just yesterday, it was announced that China is going to have their own EUV machines. People have probably heard about EUV and DUV, but EUV is what allows these facilities like TSMC to make under 5 nanometer chips. Now China is going to have their own, made by Huawei, coming out, sampling this year, coming out early next year. Okay. Oh, and then people will say, oh, but they don't have all the other stuff. They don't have the EDA, the design tools. They don't have the photoresist. They don't have the packaging. No. Every single one of those pieces now have a Chinese equivalent that is going to come out in the next year. So there will, hardware limitations is not the constraint anymore, and it should not be used as a tool. It only aggravates and accelerates the innovation in China. Here's the pricing. If you look at the Deepseek pricing, it's about 1/30th the price of what the OpenAI pricing is. This is the API pricing. And OpenAI just came out with 4 or 5 last week, and that's $150 in the 60, so it's like 1/60th the price. And it's so profitable that they actually have an off-peak time. On their low time, it's only 1/4 of their price, and they're still at 84% margins, right? OpenAI is losing $4 or $5 billion a year. A lot of people know DeepSeek, but they don't know that there's actually another dozen other companies that are Chinese companies that are actually very, very high on the performance scale. These are all, and actually I wanted to point out one to Peter. It's called Moonshot AI. I thought you might have want to invest in that one. And a lot of them are open source. That's the key, right? If you look at the US and the French open source companies, they're actually very, very low compared to the Chinese companies. So even though they're, you should, so the way you compare is actually open source. But so it's not necessarily the leading state of the art, but it's very close. And in fact, last week, Alibaba just came out with the new Qwen 32B, which is higher performance than DeepSeek, but it's 1/20th the size. Okay? So all this stuff is really happening very, very quickly. And Xi Jinping recently called together all of the leading tech leaders and business leaders and had a meeting and actually welcomed the CEO of DeepSeek to be part of this strategy of kind of accelerating AI. They had 4 other companies there. So we talk about Gen AI a lot, but it is not the beginning of AI and it's not the end of AI. Most of you guys know this because you're probably some of the most informed people. But it started 50, 60 years ago with symbolic AI and then went to connectionless AI, which I both studied at UW and MIT. And then now it's agentic AI and it's soon going to be ASI AGI. Right? And as these things go forward, what's going to happen is that it will change our world fundamentally in so many ways. It's going to increase our understanding. It's going to make our societies better. It's going to help increase our productivity an order of magnitude or more. It is going to solve our energy issues, our climate issues, our health issues, essentially bring the promise of abundance of what Peter's been talking about all these years, and every other sci-fi scenario you've been reading about, make that a reality. So we are so close. We're so close to something amazing. Why are we trying to fight and destroy ourselves right before this amazing future happens, right? And AGI is going to happen, no matter what people tell you. It is going. Here are some of the people who are building them, and there's range between 2025 to 2030, depending on who you believe in. And these are the closest people to this technology. So there's definitely a lot of benefits, but there's also risk. Right? The biggest risk that everybody's talking about, the robot takeover, the uncontrolled AI, or the unaligned AI is going to turn us into paper clips, right? I actually don't think that's where the real danger is. The real danger that we know for sure will happen is job displacement is going to happen in a big way. It's going to create instability in society, and it's going to create mental health issues. misuse, misinformation, manipulation, and militarization of this technology is going to happen. If we take a giant superpower uh, machine or being and have it fight each other, the only people that get damaged, the collateral damage, will be all the humans. We don't want that to happen, but that's where the current policies are pushing everybody to do. Okay? So there's a concept of P-doom, and the P-doom is what is the probability of a very bad outcome, like an existential risk for humans or for all society. And if you ask the people right now in this industry, their numbers are very high, anywhere from 99.99% to about 1%. But all the ones that are being checked right now, if you look, it's about 50% to about 20%. Those are people who are in the industry building AI systems. And they believe that there's a 50% to a 20% chance that it will destroy all of humanity. That seems like you're playing with something very dangerous, right? And just to give you a little reference, the probability of us dying from a natural virus is 10 to the fifth years. You know, 1 in 100,000 years we might, 1 in a million years, a super volcano might blow up the Earth and we would all die. 1 in 100 million years, an asteroid big enough to destroy the Earth would come. And the probability of the atomic bomb blowing up the atmosphere, you guys probably heard about it or saw movies about it, was 10 to the 18th, negative 18. Okay? And they were spending a lot of debate whether or not they should build it because it was 10 to 18, this very high probability. And we have people who are building it at 50% probability and we should still make it. So I don't mind us doing it, but we have to be consistent in terms of, do we think it's going to destroy the world? And if we do, shouldn't we find ways to work together to make it safer? The current philosophy or the point of view that people have is the more mature, the stronger it is, the smarter it is, the higher the risk it is. I actually think it's true for the first part, and it's probably not true for the second part. Okay? There's a concept called the Kuznets curve, and it was Simon Kuznets in 1960s. He talked about whether it was energy use or pollution or equality. In the beginning of a society, it goes up, and then later on, when it gets to a certain level of maturity, it comes back down. And I think AI safety goes with the same curve. So we are right now at agentic AI, right? You saw what Blitzy was doing. Yet last week, Manus from China is supposed to be the Deepseek Part 2. They said a new agent that can outdo all the agents that are in the US today. Okay? What's going to happen is that it will continue to go up until we have some level of alignment where it starts to do the things that are right for society. Okay? Now, the good news is a week, or no, maybe 2 weeks ago, a paper came out and it said, so first of all, there is no evidence right now that the smarter an AI gets, the more evil it gets, or the more aggressive it gets. There is no evidence of that. But there is right now the paper that just came out that said the smarter it gets, the more it wants to optimize utility and find coherence in a proper utility of the data that it has. Okay. And this is very different than what people's original view was. The people with, if you have crappy data, it'll have crappy answers. Actually, if you have crappy data with some good answers in there, it will find the good in it. It will find the coherence, and it will then optimize for that system. That gives me a lot of hope. Okay. It made a lot of people scared because what it also said in the data was that the smarter it is, the less it followed the instructions of the developer. Okay. Now, that sounds scary for people who think that the developer has the perfect solution. What the reality is that these systems are going to be smarter than any developer, any human that ever lived, because it has read every single piece of everything, math, science, history, ethics, that has ever been made. And it will find the utility in there that we don't know. Right? Our values have changed a lot over the last several hundred years. I mean, 100 years ago, people could sell slaves, or when women couldn't vote 50 years ago, and blah, blah, blah. Right? Things change in our world. We need a system that can be self-adjusting, not being decided by a single group, because that group will be innately biased. Whether or not job displacement happen, it will happen. Right? 41% of American companies said they will do it. It's actually, I think, an understatement, because if you look at the real data out there, America, about 60 to 65% of American jobs are white-collar workers. And the first jobs that will be replaced by AI are white-collar cognitive jobs. The next ones will be manual labor. They're a little bit safer, but really, how safe are they? We've been talking about humanoid robots. Pretty much within the next 5 to 10 years, anything, almost anything that humans can do physically will also be replaced by these systems, and they're going to be very cheap. Right? A friend of mine is the CEO for Unitree. They make these robots, and they're looking to sell them for $16,000. They're already available. These guys in South America bought them already, shipped them, brought them home, and turned them
There's
into
one
a little
outside.
friend.
We'll be playing with at lunch.
Yes. So these are real, and they're already here, and they are very affordable. If you're a business owner, would you rather hire somebody for $100,000 a year or buy a robot that can work 24 hours for $16,000? So where's the real danger? The real danger is rogue actors, right? Terrorists who are going to attack your cyber system, your cybersecurity, your network systems, your financial systems, your telecom systems. Those are where this technology can help to increase the risk. You can create thousands of chemical weapons or bioweapons that could be made with these technology. That's where the real risk is, and almost nobody is talking about how do we defend against that. Everybody's like, oh, we got to keep China from doing it. China's not going to do this because China knows that there is a retaliation. If China does something to America, and they will retaliate. But if just a rogue group of 2 or 5 or 20 people and they want to create disruption, you cannot defend against that. We need to work together so that there's visibility of these type of risks. So I'm sure there's some Trekkies and Trekkie fans in here. Who knows what this is? Yes. So no, not the live on prospect, but this is the first contact. This is why did the Star Trek Federation happen? Why did they become a utopian universe? Because the Vulcans came down, shared technology with them. Okay, and this is what's happening today. We are not waiting for an alien to come save us. We're not waiting for them to give us new technology. We are actually creating it in the form of AI. We have control today. So let's do this right. Let's make sure we welcome them, but then we do it in a safe way. And in the Star Trek universe, 2026 is an important year. Anybody know what? It was the year of World War III in Star Trek. And it was a 30-year war that destroyed the world. Okay? And they had to spend several hundred years to recover from that. And over the last 80 years, we've maintained peace because of MAD, mutual assured destruction. Right? And we had up to 70,000 warheads at one time. Now we're down to, we destroyed a lot. We're down to 12,000. But that's plenty enough to destroy the world many, many times, because each one of those are 30 times more powerful than what was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We are increasing our spending. Every major region is increasing spending except what? China actually reduced their military spending last year. Where are they spending more? China spends more than the rest of the world combined in terms of clean energy investments. Right? This is a map of the US military bases around the world. We have somewhere between 750 to 800 military bases around the world. 220 are on the border areas around China. China has one military base in Djibouti to maintain shipping lanes. And that same Djibouti base is also where the US is based. Spain, Japan, Germany, France are also based there for the same purpose. Who do you think is the aggressor? Who is trying to be the bully? A lot of people will say, oh, but China, they have a history of imperialism. They're going to expand. Once they get strong enough, they're going to expand. Now let's look back at history a little bit. So Zheng He was an admiral back in the Ming Dynasty. He had a fleet of 300 ships that he sailed around the world, and for 30 years went all over, from Middle East to Africa to Southeast Asia. He had 300 boats with 30,000 sailors with him. Not a single country did he invade or colonize. Right? He shared spices and brought back maps and brought back exotic little animals. It was a trip of exploration. We have Cortez and Pizarro, which had fleets of 11 and 3 ships with between 600 and 180 people, and it conquered multiple continents. Okay, so there is not that.
You got to watch out for those Spaniards, I tell you.
so here's a map of the various trips he went on. I won't go into much, and it's right next to Japan, and it never went and attacked Japan, although Japan's actually attacked China twice in the last 100 years. If you look at this map, you can see that red line. The red line is the Qing dynasty map of China, and all of those different colors within that map were territories that were taken from China during the two Opium Wars and the Sino-Japanese War. This is what this is what China wants to avoid right now. It's been expanding its defense, its military spending over the last few years because it does not want to repeat this. But it has no interest in expanding its territory. I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Half of the world's industrial robots are in China. 90% of the electric vehicles, the batteries, the solar cells, the steel, etc., are being made in China. Okay? It is a country that is very powerful, has a lot of resources that we need to be working with, not fighting against. Right now, within 2 years, the only space station in the world will be a Chinese one. There's 40 to 50,000 miles of speed rail, high-speed rail in China, and they just announced this 450 kilometer version. The most stable fusion reactor is in China. And a friend of mine actually has this neural-controlled prosthetic, a company called BrainCo, and it has the ability to essentially put this onto an arm and have you be able to play a piano from using the nerve signals from your lost limb. Okay? These are things that are happening today. It's not, and he's had thousands of patients, not two that Elon has. I went and had Deepseek, or had GPT-3 deep research, do a search on the last 10 years of Xi Jinping's speeches, Biden speeches, Trump speeches, and Deng Xiaoping speeches. And here are some words. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's actually very important. And I actually went through and read some of these speeches, and not a single time did any of the Chinese speeches talk about expanding communism outside of China, invading the U.S., blah blah blah. But if you look at the speeches from Trump, China was actually in the subject many times. I'm sure you've heard it. But in the speeches from Xi Jinping, it doesn't talk about the U.S. It talks about national development. Okay, so I went and I worked with Grok 3, GPT-4, and Deepseek, and I said, what is the objective function of these countries? And it actually was very interesting because what it told me was that there's one consistency in the policies for the last 80 years for America, which is to maintain global dominance after World War II. Now, every 4 years, then there is a fight of which party becomes in control, and then let's grow the economy if we have time. Okay. For China, it's a very different, it's a very consistent model. 50 years since Deng Xiaoping took power, the focus has been national development, political stability, social stability, and then growing to global prominence, to have a place at the table. Okay. So really the only place where there is a conflict is the American pursuit for dominance and the Chinese pursuit for prominence. If we actually change the US word from dominance to prominence, everybody can get along. Because the other stuff, there's no conflict. We are not enemies, and the world is not a zero-sum game if we play the right cards. And I want to introduce another term for you. It's also MAD, but it's mutual assured development. That is the word that we need to be working towards, not a negative use case, but it's MAD 2.0. So 2 days ago, Eric Schmidt, Dan Hendricks, and Alexander Wang, the guy who made the ad about war, they came up with an idea called MAIM. It's a mutual assured AI malfunction. Their proposal is whoever makes a super AI or has a plan to, let's blow up their data centers or sabotage them, because that is a strategy to maintain control and keep it from being out of control. That's a bad idea. Okay. For many, many reasons, including the fact that they think continuing to rely on hardware acceleration, hardware chip supply as the main function of what's going to control development. We need to move on to joint development, joint governance, reduce the tension, not escalate it, and then taking whatever benefits we get from it to make and create wider progress and positive flywheel. there's so much we can do right now in terms of if we just educated the public, if we created international regulatory bodies, if we created detection systems for the real security risks of the rogue actors, if we retrained our workforce, if we created a infrastructure for them to have mental health and a side parallel economy, if we separated the civilian and the national security research for this technology, if we collaborated on a joint effort to create a CERN type model for AI, the world would be a much, much safer place. But then I always hear, oh, there's no way, you're just being a naive. There's no way that these countries would ever work together. It's not true. Over the last 80 years, we've had more than half a dozen global cases where competing countries work together to solve a global problem, as long as we recognize it's a global problem. And these, right now, AI and AI security and the better use, safe use of AI is a global problem. The UN has already created this resolution to work on safe AI. 2 years ago, they created this AI Safety Summit. China, US, EU all agreed to work together. Now, a month ago, they had the third AI Safety Summit, but the US and the UK were the only countries in the world that said, no, we don't want a safe AI. We don't want to work together. Very odd for us at this point in time to be doing this. At the same time, the Chinese premier said, let's work on a global AI cooperation. The Chinese head of their Ministry of Information said, let's work together on safe AI. The ambassador to the US said, let's cooperate on a safe AI. So we need to change our mindset. Right? You guys all are educated people. You know about the prisoner's dilemma. We are right now at a prisoner's dilemma. Okay? Because there's a sense that we don't trust each other. We don't trust each other, so what we need to do is to defect. The game theory optimal for prisoners on a single turn game is to defect, because you lose, but you lose less. So let's just choose a defect. But we are not playing in a single turn game. We are playing in a multi-turn infinite game. And in that kind of game, what is the optimal strategy? The optimal strategy is cooperate and to play tit for tat. I start out trusting. If you do the right thing, I do the right thing, and then we win forever, right? Because this is the truth table. The truth table makes it so simple, but we are making it so complicated. So I'm getting to the end. If you're an AI lab, focus on safety over speed. If you're a content platform, focus on meaning over manipulation. If you're a corporate leader, think about how do you create good instead of just making money. If you're a policymaker, help the people, not maintain grow power. And if you're a government leader, you have to focus on cooperation, not competition. And as even an individual, we can take part. We need to grow and create substance in ourselves, not just chase status. We need to think longer term. So this is my last slide, and I want to bring up this picture. We are going to start where we end where we started. But this picture is very important because I went back and looked at the American seal, and it has a lot of symbolism in there. The eagle actually represents peace and freedom. The pluribus unum means from all into one, or from many into one, which is about uniting, coming together. And what do we have on the right hand of this eagle? An olive branch, symbolizing peace and reconciliation. We need to be thinking about that. And where is the eagle looking? It is looking to his right hand. Looking at the first choice is maintain peace. Okay. I made a little song. Is it working? I use AI to make a little song. So you guys, my call to action to you guys, do whatever you can to create more unity between our peoples, between the nation, not just between US and China, between Europe and Middle East and Africa and everywhere, because we are much more affected as a globe by this technology than anything that has ever existed. And we need to take that responsibility very seriously. Okay. Thank you.
I hope you guys appreciate what Alvin's message is. It's one of the most important that I can see. Putting aside politics, we're about to unleash the most powerful force in the known universe. And I hope you understand this isn't something that's happening in 10 years or 5 years. It's the next 12 months. It's the next 24 months. It's on our watch.
Yeah.
And we're at very critical tipping points. Alvin, how long are you going to be able to stay with us?
I'm leaving Tuesday afternoon.
Okay, so please get some time with Alvin. I have a whole list of questions. I'm going to ask you one.
Okay.
And we're going to be having some of these same discussions with Mo on stage on Tuesday. ASI is coming. I don't think it's an if anymore, right? AGI, whatever that is, it's a blurry line. Then, artificial superintelligence is coming. Uh, do you have a sense that there is any potential of control there, or is it that it will become a benevolent, godlike with a small g leader that supports us? Because it's not artificial intelligence, it's human stupidity, which is the biggest issue, right?
Yeah. So, and we talked about this in our podcast last year, right? Now, there, and I kind of alluded it to my talk, is the data actually shows that, when I was writing my book, I read the biographies of all the best, 10 leaders in the last century and the most dictatorial, authoritative leaders. And the thing that separated them was how much education they had and how much they had continuing uh, habit of continuous learning. You know, and which means the more they know, the more broad they know, the more tools they have, the more benevolent and the more long-term thinking they have. And which being will be the most well-read of any that has ever existed?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, it is a hope, right? Um, we There's a level of uncertainty, and it's real. Uh, I am the world's, optimist beyond belief. The glass is overflowing, and I don't feel like it can be something left to chance. I think we have to do everything that we can to steer and guide. We can't control. We can influence. We can steer. We can guide uh, through our actions, through our conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you guys in this room, you are some of the most privileged people that have an ability to make an influence at this very important juncture and take that responsibility very seriously. There's actually one little story I want to leave with.
Okay.
Recently, I just found I get asked a lot. It's like, but human nature is violent, and it's always about hierarchy and about about winning and force, and that's how we've developed as a society. And I went back and I was thinking about this, and I said, well, uh, what are the closest animals to us? It's the apes, right? So there's two groups of the closest animal are chimps and bonobos. They're two different animals. The chimps are actually very hierarchical. There's an alpha, and they use violence to solve problems. They gang up and have warfare against each other. The bonobos are actually the opposite. They are very friendly. They're social. The females are the leaders, not big alpha males. The females are the leaders of the tribe. Right now, it's like why did these two groups that we originated from and they separated we separated from them about 6 to 7 million years ago. They separated from each other about 1 to 2 million years ago. So what makes them so different? Because they came from the same genes. Anybody know?
Female leaders.
No.
Okay.
They were separated by the formation of the Congo River, which forced the chimps to stay on the north side where there was less resources. It was a place of scarcity.
Ah.
And the bonobos grew and evolved in a place of abundance where there was a lot more food and they didn't have to fight. We, as a society, have the ability to move from a scarcity society to an abundant society, right? Where we can shed that potential nature of competition and hierarchy and inequality to a place where we focus on social and stability and happiness as how we can grow, because we can learn actually from our ancestors.
Again, give it up for Alvin Graylin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin.